Hi, I'm Nick. I'm a nightclub photographer, and I've been doing it for at times what seems too long and at times what seems not long enough, but approximately that equates to nearly 3 years. I think the most important thing that I've learned over those 3 years with regards to preparing for a night is that I can never start a shift without going through a solid James Brown playlist. And the only reason because is that I think James Brown music is the perfect education anyone could hope for when entering that environment. You get into the club and you carry everything that that playlist teaches you. You carry that energy, carry that spirit, and it's a crazy night full of magic and unpredictabilities. Shift usually lasts about 3 hours on average. A couple of hours getting home again, more James Brown just to prepare for the editing the next day. And then the shift ends when the edit's completed. I think about a year ago that attitude and that focus changed quite drastically. So it was always focused on people in the beginning, whereas after, 2-year review, we kind of looked more at, what can we be doing to make the photos more interesting? How, as a photographer, can I change my approach to facilitate that? So I tried to change the way in which I interacted with the people. So it wasn't very much a direct open thing like, hey, how's it going? You having a good night? Do you want a photo taken? It didn't become that anymore. What I started to do was hang back a little bit more and kind of shoot from the side and capture those moments when people didn't realise their photo was being taken. And I think after doing that for a few weeks, that totally changed my whole perspective on what the job is, and I realised that although those photos are harder to get, when you get that moment and you get it with the right lighting, people are dancing to the right music. It really kind of showed in the photos. There's a perception that club photography is somehow at the lower end of this spectrum of what great photography is. I certainly disagree with that. I think club photography is it can be as great or as banal as you want it to be. I think that's the responsibility of the photographer. I think if you're as a photographer, if your visualization of club photography is a series of unnamed portraits of the same faces over the course of the night, then that's all your photos are going to represent. Whereas if you're willing to step away from that and see it as an art form or something along the lines of event photography, which ultimately it is, then there's a much higher standard of images out there that you can attain. I think that whole perception comes down to the photographer, and ultimately how they how they go about getting their photos. My style has changed quite drastically over 3 years. That mindset hasn't. I think it's I think it's less of a contributing factor now. But I think, for example, when I started, my style was very portrait heavy. So in order to get the best portraits, you have to give something to the people that you're taking photos of, and that giving something comes with that first interaction. So when you meet their eyes for the first time, you have to carry all of that energy, and you have to be that life and soul of the party. and you have to connect with them on that level. I think I learned very quickly that if you could establish that with them, then, you know, even if it's a portrait, you'll get that energy from your subjects. So I think, I think, you know, stepping away from that and focusing more on candid moments, you have to, obviously you have to be a little bit more discreet with how you present yourself, but you still need to carry that energy. Any journey to a venue involves a walk somewhere across London, and you know, I think being open to what's going on around you as well. You know, whether it's a Friday night or a Saturday night, you know, you're surrounded by people who are, you know, in good spirits. You're going out to have a good time. You know, you're in this incredible city where so much is happening, and I think just being open to that and taking that with you into the venue, that's you know, whether I'm doing action shots or portraits, that's the one thing that I have to start a shift with, otherwise the photos are shit. I think to anyone who doesn't do this job to, you know, think or assume that by, you know, throwing yourself out into the heart of a Saturday night, there's going to be, you know, there's going to be some element of risk there. But in all honesty, you know, I've been doing it for nearly 3 years now, and, you know, I don't feel as if anything's going to happen. I was in a venue not long after starting, and I think the worst thing that ever happened to me was, you know, I had a glass come flying across my view while I was checking my photos. It was very clearly directed at me, but, you know, thankfully due to regulations now, they're not glasses, they're plastic vessels, so if it would have hit me, it would have been fine. And it was empty anyway. So I think London's, you know, I can understand the perception of risk, but I think if you carry a positive energy about you, and you're aware and acknowledging of others, I you know, obviously anything can happen, but I think generally more times than not, you're going to be okay. But I think generally, you know, if you exercise caution and, you know, luckily I'm quite tall, so if I'm walking around a venue, I can have my camera and, you know, stick my hand across the crowd, and, you know, no one's going to get up there unless you're a fucking giraffe or something. So, you know, it's fine. I think as long as you're careful and you're aware and you have a general, you know, sense of spatial awareness, there shouldn't be any reason why, you know, your kit should come into danger. Obviously, again, it's always a possibility, but as long as you're aware of the space around you, then I've certainly not had any issues. People move out the way for you as well. It's like you feel like Jesus standing in the Sea of Galilee, and the water caresses itself away from you, and it's not actually water, it's the hundreds of hordes of people. I think that's my pathway, I'm going to take it. Now, I think I trained on a crop sensor camera, and I've used a crop sensor camera for most of my career as a nightclub photographer, and you know, most venues you have to use flash, so it's been fine. But if you follow the trends and try and, you know, if you like to keep ahead of what's happening in the field, then, you know, what's coming apparent is that more and more venues are kind of moving away from flash photography and looking for images that kind of represent the ambient light of the venue. Now, if you're on a crop sensor camera, that's very, very hard to achieve. And, you know, I've been there and I learned that lesson. I feel very satisfied if I take good photos across the night. And I knew that the way in which the industry was going, I wasn't going to be able to keep up with that with the equipment I was using. So I invested and got a full frame camera. Now, since using that, it would be very difficult to go back to what I was using before. So if that's what your attitude is, and if that's how you view the job, and if that's what you want to do, then I think full frame camera is the way to go. But at the same time, if you want to interact with the people, and what inspires you is getting cool portraits and meeting nice people and being that person who talks to everyone and carries that party to everyone, you can achieve that with flash and crop sensors. So I don't think not meaning to be snobbish, but I don't think that there's that you can get by with minimal kit, but if you want to push yourself and achieve that next level, then no matter how good you are as a photographer, then that there are certain limitations that the kit will ultimately present you. Well, I think before I answer the question, I say if you try and use your phone in a club, you're a fucking fool and you deserve to be shot on the spot, because it's going to be shit, and that's what the photographers are here to do. Some people will be more open to photos, others won't, and I've only been doing the job for 3 years, so I'm by no means an expert and I've not got that longevity to call upon, but I don't think that's changed, and I don't think it will change. I think what is quite interesting is when you've got groups of people and you might have one person in the group, for example, who's very keen to have a photo taken, but then you've kind of got that imbalance where there's one other person that doesn't. And I think from my experience, I think there's an argument to be made that it's this. I think we have this heightened perception of what we look like in society today, partly due to oversaturated social media channels. I think people, ordinary people like you and I, have a much greater online presence, and I think. I think there are certain insecurities about how people are represented. So I think there is an element of that. But also, there's always that person who just wants to stand at the bar, order their drink, stand against the wall, headbang all night, and not have anything to do with anything. There will always be people that want their photo taken. Likewise, there will be people who feel uncomfortable about it. That's nothing that's going to change. All as photographers we can do is just try and break that boundary and ease them into the night as best as we can. There's a very common phrase that anyone who's a nightclub photographer will be aware of, and that is as soon as the flash has gone off and you've shown that person the photograph, it's always that dreaded sentence that everyone regrets to hear. It's one more. And, you do your thing, so you're not there to cause anyone any harm. So, yeah, it's fine, it's one more. So you take another photo and, it's the same thing again. And like the problem that I have with one more is, as a concept, is it's the insecurity that it gives you as a photographer, because I feel quite comfortable with taking portraits of people, and comfortable also with the standard that I can do that in. So when someone says one more, I'm thinking that I've done something wrong, and my initial response is to, of course, it's absolutely fine. I will give you one more, but I've got to do it in a slightly different way, So when someone says one more, I usually take 3 more photos with different angles. Might try a bit of shutter drag just to, give them some cool lights to distract them from themselves in the image, because I think generally people are quite responsive to shapes and and colours, like like fish in a fish pond. But when you get that request 14 photos later, as a photographer, you just have to think, how have I failed this person? Thankfully, I've never been in a position before where I know someone's left with me knowing that they're dissatisfied with their photo. But I think if that was to happen, I'm not sure what I'd say, but I'd like to think that I'd have the courage in me to suggest something along the lines of, it's going to be okay. Life's not that bad. Go to the DJ, ask for your favourite song and dance it out. And come and ask me again once you've had a chance to simmer and we'll get a good photo. It's going to be okay. First thing that I was taught is always cherish the T&A. And for anyone who doesn't know what that means, that's tits and arse. If you respect the T&A, then the photos will follow and everyone will be happy. I think as a job and as a profession, I think there is I think with regards to representation, I think it is very female heavy. But I don't think that's necessarily a problem with club photography. I think club photography is a part of that system, but I think in general, that representation is a part of the nightlife culture as a whole. And I think club photography just falls into that naturally because it's a byproduct. I think venues are very clearly favourable to photos of young photogenic females having a good night, and I think this falls very much in line with how they promote themselves as a venue, how they're represented. I think for any venue, if they can show with their media and their photo, their video content, if they can show young, attractive ladies having a good night, then I think as a female viewer, your interpretation of that image will be that it's a fun place where you can go and have fun and be safe. But there's always two sides to the story as well. I think, obviously, if you're a guy and you see that, then you go, oh, there's lots of young, attractive ladies here. This is where I'm going to go. So I think as a marketing tool, it's genius, but that's not to say that it's a flawless system. Yeah, I think that there have been times before where I've been very explicitly asked by managers not to have so many shots of a particular ethnicity, which I said was okay, but it never sits comfortably with you. And personally, as a photographer, that's not how I like to work. I think everyone who's there deserves the chance to have their photo taken, and you can't exclude people on such a crude criteria. So when that did happen, it's only ever happened at one venue. To the manager's face, I said, yeah, that's fine. And then I just went up and took photos of absolutely everyone that I could and made sure that I had enough photos that no one would be excluded and it'd be a very happy open album that everyone could enjoy. What they did with those photos, I can't remember because it was so long ago, but generally when people, at that particular venue, whenever it was said to me before a shift, I just used it as an excuse to go and talk to everyone. So I know quite a lot of female club photographers who have had so many offers for numbers, etc., etc. All these things that we're talking about. But like myself personally, no, it's happened. I've spoken to a couple of people that that possibility has been open for in the future. But I think generally, in my experience, when you send up that following text message the next day, no one knows who the fuck you are. I commemorate the moments that you're too drunk to forget. Don't you forget that. I think generally, I've probably seen more male photographers, other photographers out on my journeys, than I have females. However, I have heard it said before that venues would prefer female photographers, and I think, I think this is because I think this goes back to representation again, like we were talking about with how venues want to see their albums balanced. They want to see more females having a good time, and I think I think venues would prefer to have more female photographers. But I think generally speaking, it's been a bit more balanced than you might assume. But if anything, I've probably seen more male photographers. But I think when you think about, if you go to a venue and, if it's a venue that puts on things like live performance, how many times have you seen a cocktail waiter serving Jaeger bombs? I've never seen a cocktail waiter serving Jaeger bombs. So I think I think the female presence is it's a very desired thing for venues. I don't think it's an easy career to attain, primarily because Fridays and Saturdays are the biggest nights of the week, and what you get in between that is very few and far between. But that's not to say that it's unachievable. I think if you were to make a full-time profession out of it, or a full-time occupancy out of it, then you would have to. I think you would have to look at other forms of event photography as well to kind of get you through from Monday to Friday. Plus also, I think to be a full-time nightclub photographer, if you wanted to just stay in the nightclubs, then you would have to rely on, if you're doing it as a sole person, then you would have to rely on your main clients providing you with work during the week, and just, let's face it, not all venues do that. So, you'd have to network like crazy. If you only need shifts between Monday to Friday from a certain client and they've already got a provider, then the likelihood of them giving you that work, it's unlikely. They're probably just going to stick with the photographers that they know. So you would have to, I think it's achievable, but you would probably have to explore other avenues of event photography if you were to make it full time. I think 3 years of doing nightclub photography has changed me as a person. I think the obvious thing to, the obvious thing to mention is that obviously, it encourages you to be more outward with people, and more adventurous with how you strike up conversation with people that you don't know. And I think I noticed that change very quickly in the beginning, when I was taking more portraits and you know, working in that style on a more regular basis. So I think in that respect, it's definitely changed me, and I think that does transpire outside of the realms of nightclub photography, aka the 9 to 5 day-to-day routine. So in that sense it changed, but I think it also I think if there's one thing above all else, it's probably feel a lot more resilient as a person than I did before, and you know, I think it's very character building in that sense. But yeah, I think it teaches you just to, you know, get on with things, and you know, in a good way. But you know, it puts you in a very, very challenging environment, and once you get comfortable with that environment, you then, you know, with that confidence, with that resilience that you develop, I think from then, you know, you can combine those two things and, you know, use them to, you know, push the craft a lot further. So, you know, trained me initially, but then also gave me the tools to better what I was doing.
I'm Umberto Pezzini. I work in a nightclub photography agency that we actually opened 3 years ago. I work there as quality control and customer relationships. I also take care of the team of photographers and the editing trainings. So, well, when we started this venture, like, our focus, it wasn't only on nightclub photography. But because we knew already the field and we knew already some of the potential customers, we decided to start with this type of work. And because I was the one most experienced in photo editing, I took care of the editing part. So everything started like in a really naive way, let's say. You know, we were just going out and trying things out. We've been really lucky that the first clients were really, in a way, open-minded, and they let us try and fail. That's the luckiest thing ever happened to us, because especially at the very beginning, if you don't have experience, having this opportunity to trial and fail is really the best opportunity you can get. Because like at the end, especially when you are a rookie of the field, there are thousands of things to learn, thousands. So being able to do that with this type of client has been really, really helpful. So that was how we started. And then in the editing, for me, again, it's been a lot of trial and error, of course, research as well, because especially at the very beginning, I was looking for a lot of material on YouTube, forums, asking to people that I already know they were doing this in the past. So sharing experiences is always really helpful. Yeah, basically that's how I started. In general, photography is not a tool that in which I feel particularly confident with. So yeah, I do definitely prefer the editing part. It's not that I don't like the photography side of it. I mean, I had a few times the occasion of doing it, and I can tell it's fun. If you like to go out, meet people, and taking pictures, it can be really, really fun. But it's simply not the way I am, I think. I prefer to stay kind of quiet behind my desk, having everything under control, having my time, doing the things in my way, not having to relate in that way to the customer in such a direct way, you know. So for me, it was more interesting the editing part. Yeah, I would say that in the first year, a bit of everything happened, from albums lost, from photographers that were going at the venue and, I don't know, breaking the one part of the equipment, like the speedlight, so you have all the pictures completely dark and you are there in front of the computer and say, now what am I gonna do to fix that? So I passed through, I think, about everything we could fail, which again has been the best thing we could do. And we've been really lucky in always lucky and I think prepared as well, because it is not always about luck. Because when you are in a situation, in a sort of crisis situation, I think that were the moments where you can actually see how good and how ready you are for the job. Because you can be the most talented person, but if you don't have the capacity of handling a crisis, then you're gonna lose the client, you're gonna lose the respect of the people around you, you're gonna lose the respect of the client, yes, which is, of course, is the most important thing. So I thought the thing that we should be proud the most is how we handle these problems and these mistakes, because doing mistakes is completely normal in any type of job, every type of experience, working experience you do. So the way you handle these situations is what can make the difference, because no one starts that is already prepared, for it. So the way you learn and the way you handle mistakes is the real trick, and that's where we've been, I think, quite good, especially at the very beginning. No worrying of failing, because failing is normal, and always having a good attitude when you have a mistake, when there is a mistake, when a client complains, when photographer complain about everything. Of course, sometimes we failed, even in handling those situations or crises, we failed twice. But even again, the thing didn't kill us, so we are still here, we're still surviving, and we learned a lot. Now, if you're gonna do only this for surviving as an agency, it can be really, really tough. If you're a freelancer and you're doing it, like, let's say, to gain some extra money or to do some experience at the very beginning, for this kind of hobbies, like for a freelancer, I think it's still doable. But if you're an agency and you're working only on this, it's a really tough industry, because there is a lot of competition outside, and most of the companies now, they realize that. And that's why they're funding a different way of gaining money that is not simply selling the service, but all the service around that you can build. So you place the album on your website, so you gain money also out of the advertisement of your website. You take the pictures, and depending by the agreements you have with the client, you can sell the pictures to third parties if that doesn't create a conflict with the client. So most of the agencies, I'm noticing, they are using different cash streams to sustain, because only with this one, only with the nightclub photography as an agency, is really, really tough. We did the same. Like, we started with this one, and more we started to open on new fields. It's quite complicated, because we try to understand, like, to anticipate what can be the needs of our clients. So through marketing researches, looking what other competitors are doing. And the main problem, because there is a problem, I would say, in this industry, the main problem, of course, like from my side, is in a way, is not a problem, is the challenge at the end, is the client. And the marketing strategy they have. Because at the end, nightclub photography is a tool for marketing. So it really depends by how the client structures his own marketing campaign on socials, because most of the time these albums are going to shared on social, like Facebook and Instagram. So I'm noticing in these 3 years that, for example, I think that the general level of marketing strategy is rising. So the customer are more aware on how to use this tool. This thing for us, it means that most of it now, with the time, we have more more demands. Like the clients are more demanding. They require, as you said, for example, pictures without the flash, it can be really tricky for a photographer. But then at the end, when you manage to handle this technique, the result, I think, is there. Because you capture the real atmosphere of the venue, depending by the lights of the venue, and this kind of thing. So, yes, I would say that there is a sort of trend, but it really depends on, our industry is really related to the marketing one of the client. So if the marketing strategy of the clients gets more and more complicated, we have to evolve as well accordingly. But I'm not saying that necessarily the atmospheric shot is the future, because there are certain clubs that are still requiring us exactly the same type of photography that they required us at the very beginning, which is, for example, a lot of portraits, or even There are even another club, another venue that is asking us to take pictures of the people in the worst conditions possible, which sounds really crazy, you know, like people wasted or people laying down. And you would be like, why would you show that on your album? There is a reason behind that. Why? Because this type of photography creates a lot of interactions on the socials, because people love to see and to comment bad things. Let's say, oh, look at that guy who was wasted. Oh, look at you, man. Like, can you do a night like this? Shame on you. And people love to interact with this type of photography. And at the end, this is a good strategy. It can be a good marketing strategy, because the more interaction you generate on your social, if you manage to anyway to keep the conversation on a decent level or an interesting level, then your page can gain in visualizations and in reputation and in a lot of things. So it really depends by the marketing strategy that each venue tries to develop. So the trend goes in photography-wise where the marketing strategy needs this to go. Sometimes clients they don't even know what to do. They have marketers that don't know what they're really doing, because in the hospitality industry, the way you gain access to marketing position, for example, most of the time is through experience. So, but like the type of experience where you start maybe as a bartender, then you get a bar supervisor, bar supervisor I think is the name. Anyway, I might be wrong, I'm not 100% sure. Anyway, and then maybe because they see you're particularly social or active on Facebook or good in posting, they make you a marketing manager. But of course, you are not really a marketing manager. And it happened that we had to deal with this kind of clients that they weren't really, really professional. So you can tell, you know, I need this and that, but I'm not really sure. And in that case, it's on you, trying to suggest and telling them, like, look, probably that would help you because that's a good thing that I can notice from your venue, etc. So being also a sort of consultant. It depends by the client you have. You need to be able to understand who you are dealing with. And if he's a professional, you behave in a way. If he's not that professional, you behave in another one. You need to choose a target, and you need to try to stick with it. Of course, this shouldn't mean being racist, but I don't know. Like, for example, when I'm asked to do an advertise, and I always ask, do you prefer to have a female or male target? This is not discrimination. It's just because if I'm selling a product that is supposed to be sold to girls, I need to know it, because in general, not every woman, of course, but in general, we know what are the tendencies of the target, of the market. So these are a massive generalization, but we can say as a tendency that the females are likely to like more pink colors rather than males, you know? So you can set up all your branding or imagery or all your albums with these types of colors, if that is your target. I wouldn't suggest to go for pink, of course, but it's just an example, you know, to show that clients can have this type of requirements, but it doesn't necessarily mean there is, for example, racism or sexism behind it. Then on the other side, I'm not excluding that some of those are actually racist or that sort of. But at the end, it's not really on me to judge the client's need. Of course, when I see people that is clearly racist or these kind of things, I'm not really happy to work with them. So as a consequence, most of the time, I don't put the extra mile in the job that I do, because I don't feel engaged with the client. But yeah, I think it can happen, but most of the time is because there is a target behind it, a marketing research behind it. You know, it's tricky because most of the time, like, one of the requirements you have the most, take pictures of beautiful people. Okay, that's already a bit challenging because beauty is subjective. But at the same time, we know inside our mind deeply what can be considered beautiful as a standard. And when you are taking pictures of beautiful people, you are not kind of like blaming ugly people. You know, you're not like making, I know the word in Italian, I don't know it in English. torto. Well, anyway, yeah, like you're not like you're not doing anything bad to the ugly person, but like it's the same reason why for a fashion agency we take models and not normal people, because you are doing advertising at the end. So it's not about selecting bad or good people. You're just doing advertising, and of course you want to show the best of the venue, and to show the best of the venue, you tend to show the best of your clientele as well. So again, I think is a marketing strategy. There is not anything behind about being mean, you know. It's just in a way the system that, in a way, it's not the system. Like it's how we are done as human beings. We are more fascinated and attracted by beauty than ugly things. I think it's kind of normal, you know. When you do, in a way, like nightclub photography is doing reportage. So while you do a reportage, everything can happen. And you're on the other side and you're recording everything. So I have seen literally a bit of everything from, I don't know, well, people puking, people showing genitals, this kind of thing. So you can literally see a bit of everything. Like especially, like, come on, like we are taking pictures of drunk people. So, you know, like when drunk human being is drunk and can show the best of them, or the worst. It depends by the point of view. Like being on the other side is the best. Sometimes it can be fun. I can tell that, like, especially at the very beginning, I don't know why I've noticed this thing in people, all the editors I was working with, you tend to, at the very beginning, to be kind of mean. You know, so you look at the pictures like, oh, look at this guy, how ugly this guy look, you know, and this kind of thing. Then with the time you realize, you know, it's just people behind the camera. Like to everyone happens to don't look the best, you know. So, but that's a thing I've noticed. People at the very beginning, when they start to do this job, they tend to be kind of judgmental. You know, look at this girl, how she's dressed. Look at this guy, how he wears the shirt. You know, these kind of things. But then, just a matter of time, you get used to it. Yeah, I think we have some pictures of some people that if only we knew who actually they are in life, we could blackmail them for some good money with the pictures we have. Well, it happened, even people like saying, look, don't post these pictures because I'm outside with my lover and my wife doesn't want to know it, of course. So everything can really happen. It's not really about the device or the tool you're using. It's more about the sensibility of the people that are going to look the social media of that specific venue. Let's say that if with the time people will be used to poor quality photography, then yes, then it can be a risk. But the real risk is not the device by itself, because what makes a difference anyway is the way you use that specific tool. It can be a phone, or it can be another camera, but people are working there. People are professional. People knows what's going on, what is relevant, what can be a good subject, how to interact with lights, and these skills, they require time to be acquired. So you can have even the craziest tool in your hand, but if you don't know what you're shooting at, it's pretty useless. But if with the time, because I notice also this thing, like in general, the quality of the imagery is getting lower and lower and lower, and people is getting used to a lower quality with the time. So that's the real risk. It's not the device, the technology that rises, it's the taste. If people doesn't have taste, then everyone can do photography. If we preserve the taste of people, we can still have professionals doing it. There is this trend. And this trend is going to affect, in general, the creative field, in a way or in another. So we really need to find a way to make people aware that quality is there. It's not as easy. It's not as easy because, like, the more you get used to food, for example, the more they give you shitty food or low quality food, the more you get used to it. You know, they made, like, for example, this research 1 year ago, I think, about flavorings. So they were try kids actual strawberries, and they grew up only with the strawberry flavor, and they didn't like it. Even the really good ones, they didn't like it because they were really used to the flavor of strawberry. So the real strawberry, they didn't like it. So that's the kind of thing is happening as well with images and with photography. I really hope we can find a way to invert this trend, because we're going to miss a lot. We're going to miss a lot otherwise.
Hi there, I'm Riccardo and my role is Managing Director for a creative company. Well, mostly account managing, customer relationship, finding new leads, finding new clients, finding new freelancers, make sure they grow within the company, make sure they learn new skills. And literally everything else, apart from the actual technical hands-on job, everything that happened behind the curtains is mainly my role. I was a bar manager. My role was selecting new bartenders, training them, and I also worked with the marketing teams of different venues, such as Jewel, Piccadilly Institute, Tiger. And the more I worked with them, the more I understand what they needed, what they looked for, and that led me to be on an advantage point when I started the company, because many people knew me, they trusted me, and I knew what they needed. To be honest, with clubs, photography has never been a big thing, you know. Like I think is one of the successes we added in our creative company is that literally, oh God, this stuff doesn't have to come out from this stuff. Can we sign an NDA or something? But like, meaning the key was to make people feel that photography is important, whereas photography is relatively important for such places because they count so much on different ways to market themselves, promotions, packages to big corporations, and the location itself. So these will be the main actual points for, you know, selling a club. Photography is more, what I noticed was like merely more out of peer pressure, meaning, oh God, they have it, we need to have it too. But if you actually asked a marketing manager, why do you need it? 70% of them wouldn't be able to say exactly why they need photography. And the fact that it contributes to the social medias rather than contributing to forms of more direct marketing makes it also very hard to track, like very hard to actually assess, is photography helping us or not? Some people think that it's helping them, some people think that it's not helping them, but I think very few people know how to use their photography very well. And most of them literally hire photographers out of peer pressure. We need to have a photographer. Why do you need to have a photographer? I don't know, but we do. Everything can be an art form, depending on who's making it. There are different ways to approach a craft. Basically, what makes it an art form, I think, is the fact that the artist or the photographer see it as a reward in itself. Meaning, I'm not doing this for the money. I'm not doing this because it's going to be used as marketing. But I do this because I have fun and I want to improve myself and I want to improve catching moments. If the photographer has got this attitude, then it's an art form. If the photographer it's got an attitude that is more reliant on extrinsic factors, such as the amount of money I'm going to get, or who's going to see the pictures and these kind of things, then it's not an art form. From my experience, I'd say generally that really what makes it an art form is the photographer and nothing else. So I had in the past photographers who left because they felt bored, but then you can see this boredom reflected in the pictures, and these pictures come up as boring. So it's like dog that chases the tail, you know, like they feel bored, but they do boring pictures. So of course they feel bored. If they were looking for more interesting pictures, maybe they wouldn't have felt bored. And you understand what I mean? Am I explaining myself? I'm not. I think I'm inside my head. Anyway, but that's the point. That's the point. So to answer your question, yes, it's a marketing tool. It's a secondary marketing tool. No club will base its strategy upon pictures, but at the same time, they're a very complementary marketing tool. You can use them for social media, you can use them for a lot of different things. But in terms of art form, is really the photographer that defines that. And I came to the conclusion that the whole advertising industry is based on these tools. I've spent a long time researching on psychological and social elements that contribute to a person buying something rather than something else. And sexuality, beauty, they are the like, I don't know this word in English. They are the basics. They are the foundations. They are the foundations of you know, like if you turn on the television, you're gonna see a naked woman anywhere with a perfume, clothes, a car. It's just the way we are framed. It's so easy to appeal, like it's so easy to attract people using sexuality. So it's an expedient that has been used in all kind of advertising, with all kind of media, photography, video making, any kind. And I think in terms of ethical issues, it brings up a lot of ethical issues because you're using someone else's body in order to advertise something that doesn't have anything to do with that person's body. It's like, there is a hot girl, come to drink here. There is a hot girl, buy this perfume. There is a hot girl, get this car. So I don't see club photography I don't see it any differently than any other form of advertising. The only difference will be that maybe for advert you will hire an actress and she knows that she is being used for that particular purpose, whereas with club photography you shoot real people. So you're using actually real people's beauty and then transform this particular perceived reality into a selling method. I have to say all of my clients prefer a particular race and gender. It's for many different purposes and not for the sole fact that, hey, I don't like Indians in my club. There are several factors. For example, certain races tend to drink much less than others, or certain economical groups tend to have less money to spend. So if you're a club manager, if your area manager gives you the task, make the most money possible, you don't want Indians and black guys in your club, because they're gonna show off, buy a bottle of champagne, chipping in all the money all together just to show that they have a bottle of champagne, and then buy nothing for the rest of the night. Whereas a businessman, an English businessman, will start with a gin and tonic and will finish with the bottle of champagne, having spent several hundreds of pounds. So you want that client. So sometimes it happened that because London is a dynamic city and people change, and there's a lot of change in the city. So a club starts by targeting rich bankers, but then a particular office next to them closes down, and the club is being used by kind of underground hip hop kind of guys that they have no money whatsoever. So as a club manager, you ask the creative company that is helping you out to target just the bankers, so more bankers go there rather than these guys. I don't think any of the managers have something personal, something to do against a particular race, but it's undeniable that different ethnic groups spend different amount of money, and it's undeniable that if you target women, men will follow. If you target men, women won't even consider entering your club. The improvement, the massive improvement we are having in terms of discoveries and in terms of quality of equipment and accessibility of this equipment allows more and more people to take good pictures. So, whereas maybe 3 years ago, if you had a camera, then you will make really good pictures. But if you had a phone, not so much. Now there are phones that make great pictures. So I think this kind of photography, if not thought from a totally different angle, is doomed to fade away. Is doomed, like as long as someone invents an application that gives people the possibility to spot the right moment with the right frame, that's it. The photographer is not needed anymore. It's not like other forms of advertising, whereas 80% is the idea, and a machine cannot have yet an idea. And then you give the idea to the video makers and they do the 20% of the job. But actually what the client is buying is the idea, Club photography is about catching the moment and equipment, and I would say 50-50. So the equipment bit is fading away and will fade away, I think. Next year, new phones, next year, new phones, next year, new phones. If someone has got some creative idea about how to help normal people frame pictures, this form of advertising won't exist anymore, meaning it will exist, but maybe they will get the very clients to do that for themselves, rather than hiring a photographer. So that's what I think. I think is a step for our creative company. We always wanted to focus on the ideas itself. Of course, before, without knowing a vast network of freelancers, without having experience with clients, it's hard to put yourself forward and saying, we have great ideas, please hire us, So, of course, we're going step by step. But I don't expect this form of business to last long. If you can match the quality, then then you got just the photographer's skills. The photographer's skills pay, you know it yourself, like the photographer's skills are incredibly important in terms of if someone has got a trained eye and if someone doesn't have this eye, then you can really see the difference. In the feedback sessions we really see the difference. But I don't think that there is the same amount of pre-production, ideation than in a video advert or in a photography shoot where you have models there for a particular reason, So I think is the equipment, but it's also the fact that the amount of ideation is not much. The amount of ideation you put in this kind of photography is not much. More than ideation, I would say that a club photographer needs intuition, because he is kind of ideation in the moment. Like, look at that, boom. If they have the eye to do that, then that's fine. The only thing I wonder is it possible for an application to do the same? Because I'm hearing about applications solving people problems, suggesting people stuff. Why cannot an application suggest what's the right frame or these kind of things, So it all depends, and maybe I'm just being negative, this is just my own opinion. I tried to run research sessions before with the previous team, about how important is event photography for clubs and where it's going to go. And the results of this research were always very, very open, very open. Like we couldn't, my idea was if I find a way to tell the managers, if you get event photography, you're gonna get this in return, then we can sell, we could have sold many more clubs. But yeah, that's the point. That's the point. We didn't actually find a definite return on investment for this kind of craft, whereas we found it for video adverts. We found for many other things.
I'm just going to switch things over. I've just realised the...
It's all very plain, to be honest. Not as much fun as I guess the photographers or those who are in charge of checking up the photography, or those who are in charge of checking up the operation, because I deal with offices. I deal with offices and managers. So we plan the month, they more or less tell me what they need, they more or less tell me what are the preferences in terms of photographers. I chase clients up for payments. I send reports about the amount of money we got, the amount of money we're expecting to get, and pay freelancers. So it's all very, very plain for me, and it's not fun. Like I wish someone would, you know, like do to my trousers the same things that they did to Nick, so just to make it like, hey, but no, I usually go to these clubs in the morning, having meetings. It's all very plain. They are doing office work. Most of the time, you wouldn't be able to just say that they are clubs. Maybe they look like offices, normal offices doing jobs and working up the profit margins as any other business. So the only difference would be the stink of alcohol that is still left in the corridors after the night, and the fact that the level of education seems to be a bit lower than the other industries without going forward.